Hello, just watched episode 8 of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. The R-Town episode, for lack of a better word. Which definitely, it was really coming from like quite a beautiful place, I think. The episode was definitely trying for, and did succeed in some ways, with the idea of dealing with trauma and, ideas of resilience, of being able to kind of hold that, we live in a giant universe where nothing matters, and yet it does matter at the same time. We are both just tiny little specks in a gigantic, infinite universe, but we're also little worlds within ourselves and hold meaning that way. It was a very pretentious episode, and I don't mean in it that it was like it was putting on airs or something like this. This is a kind of an idea pretension, I get from a couple of movie critics who like talk about like how Marvel Endgame and in the Infinity kind of gauntlet, that the end part of like 30 Marvel movies culminate in these last two movies. And that means it carries like all the stuff that you sort of had to know before it to get the full emotional resonance of those last movies, or at least a good majority, a good hunk of that. And this episode comes with that kind of baggage threefold. I already mentioned Our Town, a play which is very big in the United States, which I have never seen. I've only seen endlessly referenced on American television. Apparently, it's a favorite of theater kids, and not surprisingly, a lot of theater kids end up in the arts, in television arts, so you get endless references to it. So there's that one, which I've never actually seen. I've only seen references to, and sparse minimalist staging, life in a small town, kind of that idea. It's definitely a kind of a dealing with loss, I think. I mean, this episode definitely does a good job of explicating character of Emily, who is a ghost girl, as the episode puts it. So there's that. There is the character of the Doctor, who is a holdover from Star Trek Voyager, a different Star Trek program. And within the episode, it references something that happened to the Doctor in one of those episodes. And I actually have watched a good bit of Star Trek Voyager. I can't say I actually really have a clear memory of that episode, but that is sort of the trauma that he is holding of a lost child, and how that affects how he interacts with Sam, the holographic student who is ailing in this episode and is having trouble dealing with trauma. And then, on top of that, probably the one that's the best integrated in and doesn't ask for the least is the character of Tilly, who comes from Star Trek Discovery, which I saw the first season, 2 seasons of Discovery, but then I kind of gave up on it. Just the long form, I felt like every time they swung for that, they kind of spun their wheels, and I was never able to get back into it. Even though, there's some really good actors and stuff like that, but I'm very happy that they're back in episodic. So I know Tilly. I don't know what happened to Tilly. I knew that Tilly from like the first season and second season as kind of someone who was new out of the academy herself and had aspirations to be a captain. Apparently, going from secondary sources, she kind of sets aside the wanting to be a captain and realizing actually, she'd like to be a teacher, which would very much set her up well to be on this show. But there was definitely a thing of her referring to her own kind of trauma, especially at the end scene, which I think it would have hit me more if I had privileged knowledge about that. So, and I mean, they do work amongst the actual characters, like the actual characters of the show, the students, that they actually do good work there. Sam sort of gets sidelined by the doctor's story, but she gets to do some excellent kind of emotive work there. I think the Betazoid young woman is it's a little bit, as someone said, kind of melodramatic, and they're definitely talking everything out. They're spelling everything out in this episode in a way that I found somewhat grating. It's like you could excise the exposition, have a shorter episode and a much more powerful episode if we actually were allowed to discover those things about the characters themselves. So it's like, I like the sentiment, I like the feel. I really wish they would put aside kind of stuff from outside the other shows and just let the characters of this show get to do their own thing. It's overwhelming them, and it's overwhelmed them in this. And the Cisco one, the one with Deep Space Nine, it did a better job of letting the characters go. I think that was far more effective of using legacy characters. It's really hard. I think this one overdid it. And I think it overdid it with that, and also having all the Thornton Wilder stuff. Even though the Thornton Wilder stuff, I'll have to say, they allowed the young students actually kind of do their own stuff there. Some ways they used Tilly as an expositor on some of that stuff. They had some rather dramatic scenes with the Betazoid, Tamara, whatever her name is. Yeah, Tamara. That were a little bit, her and Tilly going back and forth. Is like, okay, we're doing the counseling. No, I don't want to do counseling. You have to live. You have to be present. It's like, no, I don't want to be. Oh, drama. But there were some nice parts in there too, where the characters actually just got to be themselves and not exposit. So mixed for this episode. Some beautiful tension, some beautiful scenes, but pretentious in the sense of bringing too much outside and overwhelming the characters, and a little too on the nose for my tastes. Of like, you should have backed it off a little bit here and let it breathe, let the people show what they're doing versus have them explain what they're doing, what's happening. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.